go ahead and call our work session to order. I know we got others that are coming, and traffic's a mess. Did y'all have any trouble getting out here, anybody? It's getting like Atlanta, Georgia. And I believe that Jackie Thomas, were you there, Jackie? You may not can hear us. I see you.
I am here.
Okay. Good.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Oh boy. Yeah. We can. So we're going to go ahead and get our work session started. Miss Jones is on her way, caught traffic. So I've asked my brother Ben here to read our delegation statement.
Thank you for your interest in addressing the Hamilton County Board of Education. During your presentation, please address the board as a whole, not individual board members or administrators. Also, please do not present complaints or concerns you have about an individual employee of the school system. If you do wish to voice those complaints and concerns, you should contact central office and ask for a meeting with the superintendent, since the superintendent is responsible for individual employees. Please remember to limit your remarks to 5 minutes. We will advise you when you have 1 minute left, and you certainly may begin when you're ready. On that note, the first individual we have coming to speak is Angelica, forgive me on the last name pronunciation, Alivedo.
It's Angelica Acevedo for anyone. It's okay if you get it wrong. Hello. So my name is Angelica. I am a resident of District 6, and I'm also a member of Public School Strong. I wanted to address the school board this evening. As a community member who's deeply invested in the future of our children and the integrity of our education system, I stand before you today to advocate for the school to support transportation to the polls for eligible student voters in Hamilton County. As we approach an important election, it's crucial to address the barriers that prevent our young voters from exercising their rights. Many students lack access to reliable transportation, which hinders their ability to participate in the democratic process. This issue is particularly pressing in our community where socioeconomic disparities can create additional hurdles. While we celebrate the strides of our county has made in civic engagement, we must acknowledge that the journey to the polls is often fraught with challenges. Our eligible student voters who represent the future of our democracy deserve the opportunity to cast their votes without facing logistical obstacles. To ensure a fair and free election, all students who are eligible should be given the opportunity to vote. We cannot truly believe in democracy if we do not hear from everyone. Our students are uniquely positioned to speak on the needs of education reform, and it's imperative that their voices are heard in this process. Are we genuinely representing our students if we do not ensure they have the ability to vote? By facilitating rides to the polls, we empower our youth to engage actively in their democracy, reinforcing the importance of their voices in shaping their educational experience and future. I urge the board to allow school buses and resources to be utilized to transport students to the polls. This initiative could ensure that eligible student voters have access to safe and reliable transportation to vote, making it easier for them to fulfill their civic duty. In conclusion, investing in our young voters means investing in the future of our community. By ensuring that every eligible student has the opportunity to vote, we foster a culture of engagement and responsibility. Let us work together to remove barriers and empower our students to exercise their fundamental right to vote. Thank you for your time and consideration. I look forward to discussing how we can make this vision a reality for our students.
Thank you. We appreciate that. Next up, we're going to have Alondra Gomez speaking as well.
Good afternoon. Thank you. My name is Alondra Gomez. I am a resident of School Board District 11 and a nonpartisan voter engagement organizer with Caleb. The majority of my work consists of registering eligible Tennesseans to vote, educating voters on the important election dates and polling locations, and providing them with the necessary nonpartisan tools for them to research their candidates and vote according to their values, all in the name of empowering voters to become consistent participants in our democracy. Through my work, I also represent Civic Tennessee. Civic Tennessee is a 501c3 civic engagement coalition made up of 27 organizational partners across the state that envisions a future where underrepresented communities have a greater voice and influence in shaping state policy and choosing leaders who affect our lives. Tennessee consistently ranks among the worst states for voter participation. A research study recently released by Organize Tennessee, a nonprofit organization driven to uphold safe, secure, and accessible elections, found our state to be 47th in voter turnout nationwide, 50th in youth voter turnout, and overall ranking among the most undemocratic states in the country. That is appalling, to say the least, but our school board has a unique opportunity to make a difference. As I engage with young voters across our county, not having the necessary information, resources, and support are often cited as some of the main reasons why young people don't vote. Transportation is one of those necessary resources. As less and less young voters engage in our democratic process, it is up to the adults in the room to create accessible pathways for young voters to feel empowered and incentivized to cast their ballots. We do not have a truly representative democracy if people don't vote. By allowing school buses to be used for early voting, we are sending a clear and direct message to young voters and students that we care about their values and what they want to see out of democracy. I strongly urge the entire school board to support rides to the polls using school buses. Let Hamilton County be the trailblazing force that moves our state from being 50th in youth voter turnout to first. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Gomez.
Okay, thank you. That takes us down to presentations. HCS Connect.
Just to wait for them to pull up the slides real quick. You all also have them in front of you. All right. Perfect. Thank you, guys. All right. Hello, Mr. Chair and esteemed board members. Thank you so much for your attention this evening. We're so excited to be here to talk about HCS Ag Connect. This is a program that we've been running for 4 years in partnership with the Enterprise Center and EPB. We've given you all an update annually since you all invested from the very beginning. So we're really excited to be back here tonight as we go into year 5, and my colleagues here will introduce themselves in just a moment, but I'd like to start, of course, by thanking our partners throughout the community who really invested in this program at the start. And you're going to hear a little bit about the history and origin, especially for those of you who are new to our board, to hear about how we got started with HCS Ed Connect. But we could not have done this work without a true public-private commitment there at the very beginning. So we're excited to give you an update and are continuously grateful to these partners.
Thank you. My name is Jed Marston. I'm with EPB, and I have the position of talking a little bit about how we got this started. So you'll remember back in the summer of 2020, we were in a strange position as a nation and, of course, locally. And the leadership at the Hamilton County Schools came to the leadership at EPB and said, we're going to be learning remotely for the foreseeable future, and can we come together and come up with a solution for this? So we decided, even in that moment, although it was a crisis moment, that we wanted to develop a lasting solution for this issue. We saw it as an opportunity to close the digital divide for a lot of people in our community, not just during the pandemic, but in a lasting way. One big asset we had that other communities don't was that we had already deployed a fiber optic network that was accessible to every home and business in our 600 square mile service area. So that became the cornerstone for a solution unlike anyone else in the nation has deployed in that situation. We also wanted to make sure that every single student in need would have access to this, and so we built it around those parameters. And lastly, Rachel just showed you the slide with all the funders. We have funding from you, from EPB, from the city, the county, the state, and a number of private foundations. So it's a true public-private partnership. And what we launched was what we call HCS Ed Connect, powered by EPB. It is available to all students who receive various kinds of federal assistance in the Hamilton County K-12 schools. It is a home-based fiber optic internet service, and we also provide a free router and 24/7 tech support. So these customers are treated like every other EPB customer. It is not a separate tier or anything of that nature. I also want to emphasize our continuing commitment. One of the things that all of us do in this partnership, the Enterprise Center, the schools, EPB, is to market this program. So we are still every year throughout the year promoting it, trying to make sure we connect with all the students who need it. We were able to do this because, as I said, we had that infrastructure in place, and that allowed us to do fundraising really just for the last piece, that last connection from the street to the home, and that made it possible to do this and sustain it. And we see it obviously as something that gives us an advantage for our students so they can work on their homework. And it also has positioned us for national leadership. Monique is going to share some more information about that. But one big thing is Hamilton County Schools have been featured in the last year in CNET, Forbes, Technovation. So it definitely has a local impact, but it is also one of the ways that we highlight our community as a place for others to come and invest at the national level, which of course is part of our economic development mission. So with that,
That's great. Also, forgive me, y'all. I realized I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Rachel Eamon. I work in our Office of Strategy with Shannon Moody. So, of course, would be remiss to not explain how this also is very connected to our strategic plan, Opportunity by Design. Even though we developed it and implemented it before Opportunity 2030, it's extremely connected to our values. I think particularly want to focus on those values of integrity, collaboration, and stewardship. EdConnect is an extreme example of how we put students at the center in the work that we're doing, collaborate with both community members, partners, and our individual schools. And I hope what you'll hear tonight is that we are excellent stewards of the resources that you all invested several years ago. In terms of our commitments, you'll hear a lot tonight about the Life Ready aspect of HCS EdConnect. That certainly places us into that every community served commitment beyond then the individual family and community benefits that we see that allow us to support our communities and families beyond the classroom. But of course, you're also going to hear that this is an impact, positive impact on student learning as well. So even though we find ourselves, I think, mostly in every community served, you'll see impacts around every student learns. So first things first, EdConnect absolutely does help us to ensure that our students are connected, competitive, and life ready. We live in a 21st century world, right? And everyone needs to be able to access the internet first and foremost, but they also need to be able to navigate it. HCS EdConnect, by closing the digital divide for our students in particular, has far-reaching impacts on their abilities to then really personalize their learning and career opportunities. We have multiple tools within the district that we implement that students can, outside of the classroom, personalize their learning to themselves. And having access to the internet at home really helps them to make sure that they're able to stay connected to those opportunities. You're going to hear, again, Monique talk about some of the research that we have around EdConnect, and one of the things that we found is that it expanded our family connection as well. When families have access to the internet at home, they're able to continuously engage with their students' learning on a really consistent basis, right? They're able to use PowerSchool, they're able to check in on their students' grades and attendance and progress. They're able to attend IEP meetings, all of these things that when you don't have access to the internet at home, it's more challenging, if not sometimes impossible. So just as an example of what we've done to improve our enrollment just in the last few months, we have started, and through huge support from our partners at the Enterprise Center and EPB, we have started doing back-to-school enrollment at the Back-to-School Bash. So I think that opportunity for students to enroll in person, but also learn about HCS EdConnect and then enroll later on, has really boosted our start of the year enrollment numbers, so that is very exciting. This year, we transitioned our enrollment from a one-off call your school if you need help to the ability to enroll directly in PowerSchool. So this provides a lot of sustainability to this program because it aligns it to all of the other programs that students have access to. We've also directly connected it to our Family Connection Center. So our amazing folks in the Family Engagement Department who run the Family Connection Center are really the boots on the ground for troubleshooting for schools if their students are having any issues getting connected to the program. They do lots of continued outreach on HCS EdConnect, so they've been a real boon to us, making sure that we're able to continue enrolling students quickly. And then, of course, we participated in this research study, which we were happy to do because we wanted to know how it was impacting students both in and out of the classroom. So quick numbers, we do have over 17,000 students who are connected to the program, which is more than a third of all students in the district. We have more that are eligible, so there's definitely work to be done, but this is phenomenal. And again, you'll hear more tonight about the national kind of level that we're seeing EdConnect really play in. And it's completely true that EdConnect is one of the foremost programs that connects this many students across the nation. That number of 17,000 students specifically impacts over 10,000 households and 30,000 individuals when you start to think about the family impact that EdConnect includes. In your handout in front of you, you do have a map that you'll hopefully be able to read this a little bit more clearly that should show your individual district connection numbers and connection rate. The number one takeaway I always get, we do these maps every year, and the biggest takeaway, of course, is that this isn't a program that only benefits or impacts one part of our community, right? We're seeing that this is something that we need, downtown in our suburban ring and then also out on our rural edges of our community. It's helping students in each of those locations, and we definitely hear from families all over the place that it's a positive impact on their lives. So we'll happy to take questions on these things at the end, of course, if you have questions about your district in particular. Another kind of just interesting point here about this number of connections is it's around 7.5% of our total county population. So, I mean, EdConnect is making a significant impact outside the school district. It's not just, we love it, of course, as an education program, but it's not just an education program. With that, I'll turn it over to Monique.
Good afternoon. My name is Monique Kirkendall-Quarterman, and I'm proud to be leading the Enterprise Center as President and CEO as of July 2024. But thank you so much for your partnership and your service to our youth. I have to say that, and thank you to EPB as well for making this possible. This is a tremendous program. So really quickly, I'm going to run through just a couple of slides to talk about long-term impact. Resiliency. So this year, the Affordable Connectivity Program, that's a federal program for broadband subscription access, ended. Over 400,000 Tennesseans were impacted by that, including up to 18,000 families here in Hamilton County. Over half of them will remain connected because of the HCS EdConnect powered by EPB program. Also, we see rapid growth in digital access. The Enterprise Center, as well as EPB, are great partners in expanding this. As of the 2019 through 2022, we have surpassed the national average of growth in broadband subscription access. This is why we get calls from all over the nation, and we get awards from federal institutions because they want to duplicate this exact kind of impact in communities all over the United States. And so thank you for your leadership and support of this program. And if there are just a couple of things to remember, we are evidence-based and engaged in continuous improvement. We want to hear from you. HCS EdConnect has improved student performance. We have the numbers to tell that, even before the wonderful research study. We serve underserved and hard-to-reach students. And also, it improves family engagement and economic milestone achievement. Yes, we track, in addition to education engagement, how many job functions and accessing extracurriculars and all of that with our families. So really quick, family feedback. We had a great experience with HCS EdConnect. The extra money from not having to pay that bill allowed us to sign the kids up for extracurriculars like swim team and gymnastics. This is from East Hamilton Middle. So real families are at stake here. We're so glad for your partnership in being able to reach them and keep them connected, keep this community resilient, regardless of the great federal support that is out there. This EdConnect program is so essential, and we're excited to continue this partnership with you. For those of you in the room or you know a family that needs this, edconnect.org, check us out, but also give us a call. We are here and we're ready to support families. Thank you. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Here, go ahead, buddy.
And so 17,250, that's the ones taking advantage of your program, but this does not count the students whose parents already have internet and all that and are using that. These are the ones that are taking advantage of EPB's generosity.
That's correct. That 17,000 particularly represents those enrolled in this program.
Right.
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
And thank you for your question.
Larry?
On one of the pages here, continued innovation, it said that there was going to be a 3-year Boston College UTC research study. Can we get access to that study?
Absolutely. That is actively being coordinated through the Enterprise Center, and we are more than happy to
Okay.
share the results along the way. Thank you for your question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lee?
Okay, and I was wondering, those who are eligible, do they have to be eligible for the free and reduced lunch program in order to be eligible to receive these services?
Yes, great question. This program is available to students who are eligible for free and reduced lunch or who attend a CEP school where all students are receiving free and reduced lunch.
What's your goal? I mean, I see a percentage of students that are connected. Where do you want to get to? What's the goal?
Thank you so much for that question. The goal in the end is to make sure that all students have access to consistent high-speed internet and that their economic status, socioeconomic status isn't a barrier to being able to continue to learn at home.
Okay, so as I look at these numbers in, if we want everybody, that's 100%, I guess, isn't it? So we're a long way from there.
We're still studying that a little bit.
Yeah.
I got that question from Leadership Chattanooga of when does Hamilton County reach 100%? And the answer to that is that is why we continue to get investment from all over the nation, is that we are probably the closest and fastest growing, and they look to our feedback to tell them how to do it in other places. I have yet to see a 100% county, but I would love it if we are first.
What are you guys doing, or maybe what are we doing to market this opportunity to our kids?
Well, one of the first events that I had the opportunity to go to this summer is the Back to School Bash. And so EPB set up a tent right alongside us, and all day one Saturday we were enrolling people that were there to get ready for school. But then we also do promotion in town. We did a parking day lot. We are in community at community gatherings on a regular basis. We have staff that are constantly available in promoting the program from any chance that we have. So if there is a community gathering where folks can benefit from enrolling in real time, please let us know. We want to be there. Thank you.
And I'll just add, Mr. Smith, to what the school district is doing. We do direct outreach to all of our families who we know are eligible. So they get an email and or a text through School Messenger from the Family Connection Center that says, you're eligible for this program. It's also available through registration. So when our new students are coming into the district, if they're showing that eligibility, whether through free and reduced lunch or through CEP enrollment, they have the opportunity to enroll in EdConnect through their registration process. And then we do kind of like catch-alls throughout the year as we recognize that, if there's still a significant number of folks who haven't responded at all, they get a couple of reminders throughout the year to say, hey, you can still sign up. And then even our families who have said no to the program in the past but are eligible still, we send them a reminder too, not frequently, but once a year, that just says, just a reminder, you're still eligible for this program. We know you've said no, but if you ever change your mind, the form is there on PowerSchool. Not to say we could not be doing more, and we're working closely with EPB and the Enterprise Center right now to think about some kind of broader community campaigns that we could be working on. We've done billboards in the past as an example of one of those, but we do a lot of direct outreach to eligible families from the Family Connection Center.
Is that process pretty simple? I mean, for the simple-minded like me?
I think we have always are going to have room for improvement in how we build the capacity of families to access PowerSchool. But once you get to PowerSchool, it is absolutely easy. The form is over on the left-hand side in the PowerSchool parent portal. You just click on forms. A lot of our families are familiar with using that system for other forms that we do currently. And the question is 2 questions, right? So it's just, do you want to enroll, and is it okay if we share your information with EPB? So it's a super quick process. And then schools are sharing direct information with families as well. If you believe you're eligible and you're not seeing the form, please reach out to us, those kinds of things.
Okay. Ms. Schaefer?
Do we have data on those students who maybe are just above the eligibility, eligibility gap with inflation and things?
That's a great question. I'm not aware if we have that data point today, but taking it back to my COO and asking him how can we extract that now. If it's not something we already track, it's certainly something that we can ask as part of the research study. Thank you so much for that question. And thank you.
Mr. King?
Yeah, you talked about the form, but I remember we used to send home a form along with TennCare and a few other things. I didn't see that form go home this year in information that was received.
You mean a paper form?
Yes.
No, we haven't done paper forms for EdConnect directly in the past. We leave that up to schools. Some schools are sending forms directly home. And in fact, in the past, EdConnect was actually the only way to enroll was through SurveyMonkey that went out to families. So schools who were sending paper forms home were kind of ahead of the game. It hasn't been something that we've built a paper form process for, preferring to kind of keep it in PowerSchool. But we can absolutely work directly, and our Family Connection Center does work directly with schools who need a paper form. They help them make it something that's easy for families to do. But that has been a school decision up to this point.
And then, I mean, in a lot of cases, the ones that need the internet, they don't have it, so they can't get on PowerSchool.
No, that's
and
a
see
great
the
point.
form.
So we actually, the Enterprise Center was really helpful with some of this at the very beginning around data on smartphones actually, and how many folks actually do have access to a smartphone, even if they don't have internet at home. And then they do, again, we do calls, right, directly to those families so that if they are getting our school messenger calls, but they don't have smartphone access or internet at home, they get a school messenger like voicemail that says, you're eligible for this program, give us a call if you need it. We could absolutely be thinking about how we're reaching those families better, and the Enterprise Center has helped us a lot in thinking specifically about our Latinx population and how we're reaching our Spanish-speaking families, because those families in particular are harder to reach with some of these types of programs.
Well, I know when we started sending TennCare forms home to every child, rather than just doing it to the ones that wanted to pick it up, TennCare enrollment increased quite a bit. So I would think this would too. My other question is to the gentleman with EPB. So how does it work? EPB isn't everywhere. I know, I wish it was where I lived. It's not. We use another service. We'd love to switch to EPB, but how do you do this in an area that does not have EPB running to it?
So for the portion of Hamilton County, and this is a Hamilton County Schools program, the portion of Hamilton County that is not in our service area, the Enterprise Center actually has a program to issue hotspots.
Oh, okay.
So they're basically cellular hotspots. Most programs nationally, that's what they did during the pandemic. We have been able to continue it, you know, for the long term, in part because it's only a relatively small number of the area that we have to serve that way.
All right, so I remember, so I was an administrator during COVID, and I remember students that didn't have it having to drive to a local grocery store hotspot to do certain online work. Are the hotspots spread out even more now, or are they?
So I should make a distinction. At the beginning of the pandemic, we actually went to churches and different places where we knew there was a concentration of people and put out those public hotspots that you're talking about.
Right.
The ones the Enterprise Center are issuing are personal hotspots.
So there
they
are
actually
personal
take them
hotspots.
home, and each household has their own connectivity.
That's
that
what
way.
I was wanting.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Okay. See no more lights. Thank you guys for your work, and thank you for coming to update us.
Thank you.
Okay, update from SSC.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and Hamilton County Board of Education. Thanks for the opportunity to give an update on where we are to date and also to introduce ourselves to the newer board members. As most of you know, we've been a partner with Hamilton County for the last 3 years, providing custodial and grounds services in the schools and around the buildings. We've appreciated that partnership and have made some significant investments in both time, energy, and money, and would like to share some of that with you. I want to go back just a bit to 21, and about 4 of the top things that we heard were important to the district were accountability, our structure, staffing and retention, and training. The next few slides will go into some detail on all of those items and the fact that we have taken that to heart. From an accountability standpoint, we introduced an electronic system called Connect. It's intended to be a quick system if you have a problem and need some help to report, and it goes out to the leadership team on site. Proud to say that to date, we're at 91% completion for all of those issues. Most of those issues are things like quick spill or something very quick that needs to be happened, and it's a way for us to track it. We also are giving out surveys monthly to leadership in the buildings. I'll give you some detail around that in a bit, but there's been a good level of completion of those, so we appreciate that feedback as well. One of the other things that we committed to was a Grow Local program. As 2 of our vendors who are both here with us today, one is Mean Green Janitorial Services, our minority vendor, who represents 30% of what we do here. We made that commitment to him, and Kelvin and his team have been a great partner. And also City Green Services, they actually do the work on the ground for the mow, edge, and trim. Little information on our customer surveys. I went back to the beginning when we first started administering them. We asked several questions around grounds and custodial. Been somewhat consistent around that C+ mark. While we'd like to get a little better, we think we've developed the right system and leadership, and I'll share that here in a minute, to be sure we can be a little more consistent. I'm going to run through these quickly, but one of the things that I want you to take a look at are the site leadership at the top, the regional manager and above. 21, this is what we proposed and how we started. The 2 in Midtown and Missionary Ridge are Kelvin's group, Mean Green's group. That's what they are specifically running. In 22, we heard that we had some issues around leadership. We addressed that, and I know that in some cases that comes across as inconsistency, but trust me, we were trying to rectify problems. So in 22, we added an operations manager to help assist and create some more bandwidth. And then last year in 23, we added 2 full-time recruiters because, as we all know, people are what makes it happen, and we needed to attract more folks and get them in quicker. And then finally, we feel that this system of leadership is the one that we've are at now. We've got 2 recruiters and an additional part-time recruiter, bilingual part-time recruiter, which has been a great help. We've also added 2 quality assurance managers that take surveys in the district from a quality standpoint in our electronic database. And the good thing about that is they do not report to the site. They report to an off-site corporate team so that we can have some autonomy and get some true feedback and not interaction in any other kind of way. One of the lessons we've learned, several throughout the few years we've been here, is one, the leadership and the need to evolve that and address that. The other things that we've learned, and a reason we got to that is part of some of our other account openings of like size, and knowing that we needed to maneuver and be a little more nimble with the transition and addition of staff. All, by the way, we've not passed that back to the district as an additional charge. This one's pretty telling, and I'm sorry it's so busy, but I thought that from a historical perspective, it would help. As you can see, this year we've had our highest amount of applicants, around 1,500 to date for the month of August. That jumped up because we reached out to more job boards, not just Indeed, but some local boards as well, to drive that application process. The biggest challenge we have in getting people from the application to on board is typically background. That's where we struggle, and as we all know, in this business, we have to have that clear background check. And that's usually where we get the hang up. Some of the other things that we've done, we've provided transportation assistance, especially for folks going up on the mountain. We've spent some significant time and had suggestions from our hourly employees about just getting up there. So we've helped them with that. Temp labor, we have utilized quite a bit of temp labor through local vendors to include Kelvin and D1. So we've been able to keep the school staffed by not just our labor that we bring in full-time and part-time, but also temporary labor. We've got a really great retention program, Great Employees Make Magic. One of the things that we did this summer was we had multiple gym winners every week to help drive Summer Clean, and we feel that was one of the reasons we had a really successful Summer Clean, because we were able to retain and also reward on the spot the good work that was being done. And then finally, we talked about training. We've got some pretty robust training programs. Over this past year, our corporate HR department has come in from Knoxville to help assist with not just the hourly employee training, but also the leadership training, what it means to customer service training, front of house training, to be sure that you don't just come in the back door and put your head down. You got to make sure folks know you're around and how to interact with individuals. So as we kind of look ahead, we think we've got the right structure. We hope to continue that. We'd like to say that we own all of our problems, as we all know. In this business, there can be many. So when those are brought to our attention or we find them, we are sure to address them and follow up with Ben and Dr. Sharp to be sure that they're rectified. That was really quick. I was trying to get through the program with leave some time for question and answer. So I'll open it up to that.
Why don't you introduce yourselves to us?
You got it. I'm Val Emery, Division President for K-12 for SSC. Next to me is Jennifer Frizz, Regional Vice President. She spends a lot of time here. We jokingly refer to it as her second home. So she's been very involved in the operations.
Go ahead.
You had mentioned about hiring the positions at no cost to the district. I'd like to talk to you about, so what was the contract staffing percentage that we agreed to with the contract between you and our district for staffing at the different schools? What was the total percentage of expectation for staffing?
I'm not sure I follow the question. Are you saying the staffing level, the number of people?
Yes, the goal.
The goal was just shy of 300 individuals, yes.
Which was supposed to be what you call 90% of staffing hours. The goal was, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Fritz, correct, 90% was the target that we were supposed to receive, knowing that sometimes staff would not be able to make it or whatever.
Yeah, they definitely have the for sure.
I guess my concern is that for my district, we had a low of 1 month of 84%, but the average in District 9 of staffing was 86.8. Okay. And as a whole overall in the county, just right around 88%. You made a comment, no charge to the district for hiring the positions. All the money that was not paid for the staffing not attained, where did that money go to?
Well, we cover those positions through overtime. So that's at a premium. So while we may have only had, on average, 88% staffing, those positions were still covered through temp labor. That's not included in that number. through temp labor and or overtime. And quite frankly, sometimes managers are out there making it happen and getting it in the trenches with the team.
Okay. And I'll talk to you later about, so Dr. Sharp and you and I and Ms. Fritz had numerous meetings and some things that were promised for District 9 that we did not see. So I will get back with you and talk to you about that. My last question is,
So what was promised? I mean, is it a secret?
it was promised to increase the staffing at a particular school that was judged to be 5.4, which is 5.4 people in a day, and they were supposed to be getting 6. In a meeting we had, you said you'd give them 6, and it never changed from the 5.4. The hours never increased. And
So are we talking hours, 5 point, because what's,
no,
you said
not
5.4.
5.4 people.
Well, what's the point for, what's point for a person?
It's hours.
Okay,
Yeah.
I mean, just making sure the public understands that, because I mean, there's no human being that's .4. It's either a whole person or not.
Well, it's 0.4 of a workday.
Okay. And,
So-
and then just, I guess, from my peer, like, I mean, is it a secret to school? Like, what, I mean, like, what's, because I mean,
It's Harrison Elementary.
okay.
Right. Yeah. And I was just, I mean, the other question I had, where in pre-COVID, post-COVID, I know supplies have increased like crazy. What, so does any of the staffing money go towards supplies, or is that strictly used for staffing?
What?
Like the average of 88 point something % versus the 90, there was money there that, you know, when we met in
Yeah.
for contract in good faith, we were paying for 90% staffing, but 90% was not hit. So is the money that was not attained, and you answered it with overtime and stuff, was any of that used for paying supplies? Because I
Absolutely.
know the cost
Absolutely.
of supplies.
Our
rose.
contract rate contractually is capped at 2%. But as you just said, coming out of COVID, we start our folks here at $13 an hour. Our average wage rate right now is $15 an hour. So that's far more than 2%. Our supply costs, as you mentioned, have gone up 45%.
That's what I was curious
We're dealing with the same things that all of the public is dealing with in terms of inflation, and we've kept our price consistent based on the contract, and we made the investment in the partnership, so there's not money out there that's left over. It's all being utilized.
Mr. Connor?
Thank you, Chair. So I just want to say, I know that we've, there was, I guess it was around last weekend, there was a hiccup with some people missing some stuff. Obviously had something to do with a small weather system that impacted our general area. But in that, you know, I sent out messages to all the schools in my district and asked, you know, where are we at? What do we need? Red Bank Middle is one of the hubs, and so they were fully stocked and were able to get things other places. And I did have one person speaking to your level of hierarchy. One of my teachers, principals, said our new custodial supervisor is excellent, helping out a lot. So I just think that it's important. I know that we've got some growing pains in different areas, but I think it's important to celebrate that you guys are, it looks like, at least in my district, you guys are going after it and trying to make things better. So I appreciate that. So let's all keep working towards better.
Thank you.
Mr. Daugherty?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. One quick question, really for my own understanding. Firstly, thank you for everything y'all do. I know it's probably no easy task. I've got 4 kids, and cleaning up after them can be a challenge. I saw at one time you mentioned you guys partner with a landscaping company.
Yes.
as part of the services you guys provide to the county. Is that a separate contract that you guys contract without them, or is that rolled up under the main contract?
It's all within the main contract.
It's all in the main contract? Got it, okay. That was my question, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Ms. Jones?
So, I've lived through a couple of 3 alphabets cleaning our buildings. ABM, SSC, KMJ. No, I ain't cleaning no buildings. But, just saying, 3 letters or 3 letters? and I'm joking, but I'm about to be very serious here. I remember the struggle that it was to have someone commit to Hamilton County Schools, be willing to bid and commit to Hamilton County Schools to clean them. I remember that. And I remember the discussions that we had with the board at that time had with SSC, with our administration, as to what we desired for our cleaning services. This was like all during around COVID. I mean, this was a lot going on here. And how it was our desire at that time to look at our local economy and see what the benefit was going to be there and what that looked like. And in doing that, SSC was the company that was willing to meet our needs, willing to come in and staff our schools. They were committed. I mean, that's been from the very beginning, from the bid, it was always, they were committing to. Just as we commit every day that we come and sit at this dais, or every day that we serve at school, we commit to do something. We make no promises. We can't always say that we're gonna have the outcome that we desire, but we commit. And I feel like what I have witnessed from SSC is that they have committed and they've stuck to the relationship. They've committed to the relationship. And there have been plenty of times when either party could have walked away, but they have committed to the relationship. And I will say for the schools that I represent, typically in my schools, if there is an issue, I know that the administrators in the schools in District 5 typically build very good relationships with the staff and the stakeholders and the community partners that come into their buildings. So they have really good relationships with the SSC staff, and most of them are staffed with Min Green staff. But they have really good relationships there. And I too did reach out to some of my administrators in the district, and what I heard was that we have supplies. They said we have supplies. We have them. And what I heard was they come every first Monday of the month. I believe that's how they said it. And so the irony of that was that the text that came out said October 7th. And if y'all look at your calendars, the first Monday of October was the 7th. So if we were out of supplies, they would have been coming on the 7th. But nevertheless, we were not out of supplies when we checked with the district's leadership. But what they did say was oftentimes they're short-staffed, and they say we understand that because everybody's short-staffed. We're short-staffed is what a lot of the administrators said, but we understand that, and they try to get it done, and they do work overtime, that sort of thing. So I do want to say to the SSC, thank you for the commitment, and not necessarily just speaking to the two of you here or your counterparts that are here from the contract, but thank you to the staff that commits. Thank you to the community who may have took a temp job to come in and commit. Because let's be clear, the teenagers and kids of my day are not the teenagers and kids. Have y'all seen some of the bathrooms in schools? I wouldn't really want to. I'm thankful for them. Very, very thankful. But I do want to say that we have to remember what we're working with here, the amount of capacity and square footage that we're working with here, what workforce retention and obtainment looks like, and just be mindful of what that looks like. But I am really curious, not necessarily to SSC, but I'm going back to this one school who needs 6 people. Like, I want 6 people in all my schools too. Like, what kind of conversation was that? But I want us to remember that we have to be willing to, just as we hold our SSC accountable, we have to hold ourselves accountable. And we have to look at what are we doing here as the board. Like the presentation said, they have brought in positions that they did not agree to us in contract to support. Do we need to look back at our contract? Are we doing right by what we said we were going to do to them? We want them to do right by us. Are we doing right by them? And so I think we have to look at all of those things and pay attention to all the variables when things come up to us, and trust our staff at the leadership level, Dr. Robertson and his team, Dr. Sharp and their team, that they're doing what we've tasked Dr. Robertson to do, and they're doing what he's tasked them to do in keeping that relationship. Because to be perfectly honest, if it was me, the way things have went down recently with SSC, I mean, I don't know. I'm worried. I'm worried about what would happen when it's time to rebid, because we haven't been kind to our partner. And it's like with any other relationship, yes, we want to hold them accountable, but we haven't, and I'm saying we as in some of the board, have not been kind to our partner. And we have to think about that when you're building business relationships, because you want to be kind to your business partners, because if they walk away or we walk away, we have to go into business with someone else, and what does that look like? And will people be willing to come into business with us? And then who's gonna clean the toilet? Because I'm not. Who's gonna mop the floor? I'm not. I do it in my house, but I prefer somebody else come do it there too. But we have to think about that, and that stems over to food. If we start to contract other things out, what does that look like? People, good business is good business, and bad business is bad business, and it goes beyond the dollar amount. It's about a relationship. So I just want to share that with the community and share that with my peers on the board that are newer. If you can go back, y'all know y'all can always go back and look at old meetings, but go back and look at those meetings and those documents. This wasn't an easy feat. It really wasn't. Think about the word, how laborious it is and intense it is, and what they walk into every day. Because if you walk in your school halls, you see what they walk into every day. And just be mindful of that when we're very critical of them in a relationship, because they could be just as critical to us.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Ms. Black?
Hi, I'm the representative for District 11. When I started this job 2 years ago, I got a lot of emails from folks, my administrators in different schools, that were concerned about the quality of the work with the overnight staff. Everybody that I talk to says the people who are here during the day, we have relationships with them, they do what they need to, but a lot of the complaints that I had received was about work being left for the daytime staff by the overnight staff, and those have kind of been consistent over the last year or so. I haven't gotten any complaint emails this school year. I hope that means that things have improved and that we've got better oversight for the overnight staff, because nobody wants to come in and to extra work, right, in any job. And that was a kind of a sticking point when no one else was in the building. We were having issues with tasks not getting done and being left for the daytime staff, and the daytime staff not having enough. And it affected retention, right? Because if you consistently come in to extra work, then you can find another job where you don't consistently come into extra work. So I hope the fact that my administrators haven't reached out to me yet this school year about issues with the custodial staff means that things are being well managed and that our overnight staff issues have improved.
Ms. Schaefer?
Following up, I'm Jody Schaefer on District 7. Following up about the overnight staff, we recently in my district had I think it was a custodial staff who left a back door open. And so that just makes me ask, what are we doing for supervision and managing the overnight staff issue?
Sure. So it's a really good question. So part of when we changed the structure, when we realized we needed more out in the field, we also added additional supervisors and promoted people so that they would be able to help us, because as you can see with 10 managers, they can't be in all buildings at night. So we've really tried to empower the supervisors at night to correct those, but also when something has come up, is to get in front of it. If a door has been left open, is to address it, hold them accountable to it with documentation, but also to put it out to all the managers across the district to keep an eye on it. As well as if we see something, we get with Ben and Dr. Sharp ahead of it so that they know if something happens out in the community that may not get to their attention, but we're going to share it with them ahead of time.
Mr. King?
Yeah, I was just going to clear one thing. And yeah, everybody would love 6 custodians, I'm sure, at each building. The number of custodians at a building for a contract is determined by the square footage of that building, and that determines, the hours, and that's just something to share there.
Okay, no more lights. Thank you guys so much for your work. Thank you for coming and giving us an update.
Sure.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Thanks, Al. Appreciate it.
So, K2 literacy, I understand maybe we're not quite ready for that, or?
Yeah, we've got some lagging data that we're not ready to present it. Should have it ready for you next month.
Okay. Okay, so that'll take us down to board member discussion. We had a couple of delegations earlier that talked to us about this very issue. So I think a good place to start might be, Dr. Robertson, just to kind of tell us what has taken place,
Yep.
your thinking, how we got here, just kind of
Yeah.
give us some context, and that'll kick off our discussion here.
Yeah, so what we're talking about is an initiative to provide transportation to schools to get kids to the polls if they have enough to do it. There's a little bit of history to this, though, that I want everyone to remember and be aware of. Number one, we've been running, it's actually part of the Governor's Civic Seal initiative to do registration drives. We've been doing registration drives for years. At the school level, we've had different schools doing different things to also provide transportation for a number of years. 2 years ago, this really came to kind of a head because we had an outside organization that sponsored buses for 3 of our schools that transported kids to the polls free of charge. A couple of things that I heard from the board then, and to be honest with you, I agreed with them. Number one, if we're going to do this, we should do it for everybody. And then number two, when we bring in other groups, there could be some partisan issue concerns that we should be worried about. Agreed with both of those. And so earlier this year, our team was talking about this idea, and we got behind it saying, okay, lessons learned from 2 years ago, we're going to offer this to every school. And so there's no concerns about who's doing it. We'll take it out of the transportation budget, right? Now, I want to be clear because I've heard a couple things that aren't exactly right. We're not forcing any school to do this. We're not forcing any school to take a bus. We have a lot of schools, not a lot, we have several schools that just don't have enough 18-year-olds. Specifically, you know, Lookout Valley, I think, has less than 5, and even Sell Creek this year only has like 11, I think. And so we've got some schools that just have low numbers. We also have some bigger schools that you wouldn't think of that don't have enough registered voters. So to participate, we gave them the website. They can go and verify that a kid is a registered voter, so we don't just have kids hopping on the bus, you know, for a field trip. What I will say is this is tied to not only the Tennessee state curriculum in terms of government and civics, it's tied to the governor's initiatives, but more importantly, it's tied to our strategic plan. When we think about a ready, you know, graduate that is community involved, you know, I think I looked this up. I think I've got it right. Tennessee right now ranks 46th in the nation in terms of voter participation. So I want to be clear to this board, like the intent behind this was actually to remedy things that happened 2 years ago and follow what I thought I was hearing from the board 2 years ago addressing these concerns. Again, number one, make sure everybody has the same opportunity. Number two, we would prefer outside organizations that may be partisan not to be the ones paying for the buses. So that's kind of where we are. I think as of today, we have a handful of schools that have either already said they're not, you know, they don't need the bus or haven't turned in the form. We did send a reminder out, and we are continuing to send reminders out, but that's the context of kind of where we are and how we got to this conversation. Chair.
So, as I recall, we don't have a policy surrounding this.
Well, the policy is actually a field trip, so they're following, it's the same thing as a field trip.
Yeah, I understand that, but I'm talking about in terms of taking kids to vote.
No, sir.
Okay, and so when this came up a couple of years ago, you just brought up the two concerns that those of us that were sitting here at that time, and that was, if we're going to do it for one, we're going to do it for all. So you're trying to respond to that, it sounds like. Okay. So with that background, so let's talk about it. Ms. Schaefer.
I want to read a text sent by Chip Dale to my administrators. Bus for voting. All schools need to have a bus, even if doing 2-hour delay. It was mandatory, Dr. Robertson, is the way that my administrators took it. And it's caused great alarm.
I think way you read that text certainly sounds that way, but I think if you look at the email, I think the email even states that if you have less than 10, that you don't need a bus. Let me see if I can find the email and I'll send that to you all as well.
So can my administrators decline completely?
They can. It's a field trip, so we don't require anyone to go on a field trip, don't require kids to go on field trips. So they can, but again, what we're trying to encourage is that we're giving the opportunity to every kid.
And under Tennessee law, there is, this encouragement from the governor to do voter registration. And as we discussed earlier, I see the need for that. That is a civic, educational opportunity. However, using transportation funds, which transportation is the largest part of our budget, transportation is, I see that to be outside of our purview to take children. Beyond that, you mentioned, outside firms taking them and the risk of unduly influencing them in a partisan way. That same thing could happen with teachers. Children are very susceptible to undue influence in this way. And I think we have to be cautious with that risk.
Okay. Ms. Black?
A large part of my district, families depend on public transportation to get where they need to go. I know enough about my district to know that there is not one bus that will get you to an early voting location from anywhere, hardly in my district, especially for the people who depend on public transportation. They have to change buses at least once to get to an early voting location. And I bring up early voting locations because so many students have after-school jobs. And if they're in school until 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they go directly to their jobs and they only have, 4 hours to work. Number one, students probably don't know that it's a law that your employer has to give you time off to vote. But I think that law only applies to full-time employees. If you're part-time, you don't get that guarantee. So I don't understand why it would be considered appropriate parts of the curriculum to encourage our students to register to vote, but then not appropriate parts of our curriculum for them to be able to exercise their vote. If we can provide this opportunity for kids all across Hamilton County, statistically speaking, the younger you start voting, the more likely you are to be a consistent lifelong voter. And if our kids want to participate in the voting process, and we can take away a barrier or a hardship, I don't understand the issue with that. We're a public school. We're part of government, and we're encouraging our kids to be involved in the civic process. We're teaching them about civics. This is, to me, it looks like a very appropriate field trip to have an opportunity for hands-on learning, literally. I don't have any concerns at all about our students being influenced on who to vote for by anyone, because our kids are smart. They already have their own opinions. And our teachers, I trust them. They're professionals. They're not going to be unethical in trying to influence our students. They're there to teach, and they're there to take kids, and we are here to provide as many educational opportunities as we possibly can. And if it's an opportunity to exercise our right to vote, then if registration is fine, I don't understand what the difference between that and actually educating and having the opportunity for hands-on learning and exercising the right to vote it seems to be a very clear and appropriate response to what happened 2 years ago. Not wanting outside organizations seems very appropriate. I would rather have our students who are charged with teaching these kids every day be the ones to supervise those field trips. It seems very appropriate to me.
I can't raise a button, but after Jill finishes, may I speak?
Absolutely, you go right ahead. Go
Okay.
ahead.
In regards to this concern, I too agree. I don't really see anything wrong with this. And I say this because based on what the TC Code says, that they have the civic engagement. They're required as seniors as in high school to take civics. They have to pass by 70%. I just think this just puts the learning into practice, no different from any other learning curriculum that you're learning, that you're actually putting into practice with students. It's actually the final phase of showing them what civic engagement does and can do for students. Having Dr. Roberts having addressed the issues that were before us, as in regards to how do you create fairness, how do you make sure, take that possible bias out of it, and by presenting it as a field trip as the final learning practice of civics, I think is a great idea, and it does not create any conflict other than what people want to make it appear to be. So I too want to say that I just think it should remain those that have the opportunity to take advantage of it, that chooses to, because like everything, it's a choice, that chooses to be a part of it should participate, should actually go on the field trip if that's what they desire to do. So I don't think we should be questioning the intent of something that's required to learn by state legislatures. So, and from that perspective of civil engagement, I just think it's the final learning phase.
Thank you, Ms. Thomas. You jump in there if I forget you're there. Thank you for doing that. Mr. Connor?
Thank you, Chair. So I think we're missing a couple of key points. We keep talking about children. These are 18-year-old men and women. They are considered so responsible that all of the men have signed up for selective service to be able to vote. So every one of those gentlemen could be called into service, conscripted into service immediately. Every one of those young ladies is an adult in the eyes of the law and government. So setting that aside, we're talking about adults. Second thing is, my first grade daughter has visited both the county and city mayor's offices in the past few weeks on field trips. We send our children, our students, our adult students, on field trips all the time. That's something that we do to educate our children. This is a field trip. We're not sending them to Washington to vote. We're sending them down the street to vote on a field trip. I get a little heated, and I think most people realize that. Typically on the board, I'm pretty moderate and stay pretty even-toned, but I'm just absolutely flabbergasted that we're having a conversation of ways to deny assisting our students to vote, to do their civic duty, to do this, one of the most patriotic things that you can do in your country, to vote for the leadership that leads you. And we're talking about ways to stop that? We're trying to get in the way of a field trip to vote? Are we serious? We don't represent our community correctly if we are trying to stand in the way of our students getting to live out and do their civic duty and their patriotic duty.
Ms. Hayden?
I think it's great if we encourage all, seniors or of age people in our schools to vote. I think the idea of requiring all, schools, high schools, to have their students who are of age to register to vote is a great deal, great idea. And teaching civics, objectively, yes, of course, it's very important. But one thing, the budget, who usually pays for all the field trips? We used to, have students pay. So this, we're talking about taxpayer money for this. When we're way, over budget, we have a budget shortfall right now. And I also don't think there's any way, using taxpayer money, that we could make sure this is a completely nonpartisan effort. As a solution, I think there are other agencies, who raise funds, foundations, grants. I know Caleb's very active in certain communities and all too.
That's what happened last time. That's why we're here, because Caleb was the one who paid for it the last time, and somebody had a problem with it.
Okay, well,
I understand what you're saying, though, Ms. Hayes,
but I'm saying school funds, when we have a budget shortfall, we're over budget as it is. And I just don't think there's any way that we can execute that and be completely nonpartisan at the same time. That's what I think, believe.
Mr. Chair, can I clarify something?
Go ahead.
We don't have a budget shortfall. Just,
Okay,
I don't want
well,
that to go out
we
public
were-
and people think
I
we got a
thought we
budget
were
shortfall.
short.
We didn't, we requested more than what was given to us,
Okay,
but
okay.
our budget was cleanly balanced.
I'm new, so.
So couple things, like, you're right, we do have, field trips that kids pay for, but we also know that, especially for kids living in poverty, we make up those differences in field trips all the time. We used to actually, back in the day, if it really cost a kid, $7 to go, we would charge 10, knowing that we can't do that anymore. And so more and more, the district has taken on responsibility of paying for buses and it coming out of the transportation. So I just want to clarify those two things.
Okay, thank you.
And can I have one more point?
Go ahead.
Yeah. Another thing is we're using public funds, like taxpayer money, to bus people. So what about other community members, like, who don't have transportation? Are we busing the elderly or the disabled, and other parts of the population?
We're not
to the
obviously
polls?
transporting those, but this isn't setting a precedent in terms of using taxpayer dollars to assist people in voting. When I was in Shelby County, the elementary school that was actually a voting site. So we were air conditioning the building into the evening, opening it up, using a taxpayer funded site for voting, right? And so it's not setting a precedent to say, and again, there is nothing illegal. There's nothing that violates Tennessee code. There's nothing that violates this board's policy. I think where we're getting to in this, and again, I feel like I'm taking this on. I was trying to respond to a board 2 years ago. This is a different board, right?
We still here.
You know what I'm saying?
I'm still here.
Every 2 years, it's a new board. I would, Mr. Chair, recommend, we can continue to discuss, but what I would recommend is that if there is a direction that is different than what we're doing now, that there needs to be a policy stating that direction. Because right now, again, nothing against the law, there's nothing against Tennessee Code annotated, there's nothing that violates this board policy. If you want us to do, the administration to do something different, it would probably, with the shift in boards every 2 years, there would need to be a policy, because right now the policy we're using is the field trip policy, right? So.
Okay, we'll come back to that suggestion. Thank you. Mr. Slater?
Thanks, Joe. First of all, 18-year-old students are adults. And our job is to educate these kids, teach them that voting is a right and a privilege and a duty, but it's also a responsibility. We should be teaching them to be responsible. They're adults, and I think they want to be treated as adults. Dr. Welch at Sell Creek's got the best idea of all this. Her approach is, you bring me back proof that you voted, you get extra credit in the class. Early voting starts at 10 o'clock on those early voting days and closes at 6. They're also open on Saturdays. I think we should teach our kids responsibility. And another thing, you can call the Democratic office in Hamilton County or the Republican office in Hamilton County. They'll come get you and take you to vote.
Thank you, Mr. Slater. Now, I've got several lights on, and I don't know
Sorry.
if maybe you didn't turn off or if I need to circle back again.
No, sorry.
So, Mr. Connor, you looks like I need to circle back.
Thank you,
Okay.
Chair. Yeah, I just wanted to say one thing because, Felice, thank you. You did bring up something I forgot to say. For our elderly and people in Chattanooga, I say Chattanooga specifically because it's CARTA. CARTA will do free rides for the elderly on Election Day. Now, just before somebody says, well, they could ride that bus. As Jill mentioned, oftentimes they have a job that they can't get out of, and they are also attending school that day because it's not a holiday. So.
Okay, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Which is another argument for making Presidential Election Day a national holiday. But anyway, well, I find it interesting that, you know, I'm torn on this topic because, number one, great if these kids at 18 years old are knowledgeable. From my experience, they're not all that knowledgeable. And there are a lot of people that go and vote who are more advanced in years who don't even know the issues and where people stand, and they don't care. So last I knew, somebody can correct me, but I think you have to have an ID to work and to cash that paycheck. Somehow, these very young adults accomplished that task. You know, to come before this board and say that there are 18-year-olds who have a job who can't get to vote, that's very denigrating. It's just like saying that it's extremely, if not impossible, to get an ID. Anything and everything you do requires an ID. You can't get on a plane, you can't cash a check. There are just all sorts of things you can't do without an ID. So these kids have managed somehow to get registered to vote, even if they did it online, but they had to provide something. And I also don't like the idea that, gee, if you have less than 10 kids, well, then we're going to discriminate against you because you don't have enough kids registered, so forget you. We're not going to provide even a small bus for you.
They didn't say that. They just said they didn't need the bus. So they probably would find them a different means.
Well, that's what I mean. So
yeah, the schools have figured it out.
okay, so that's not a problem. But that concerned me that, you know, we weren't going to provide transportation just because you didn't have the requisite number, so you didn't count. So I don't know. I'm really torn on this because I'm not sorry, but I know for a fact that, you know, there are a lot of teachers that I've taught with in my career and probably now who would have no problem at all in trying to influence students to their point of view. And that's easily done. So people may be professionals, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're being ethically professional. So again, why are we having this conversation? I have to agree with Ben, although we might differ slightly in how we look at this, but either we do or we don't. Is it our role to provide taxpayer monies to transport kids, young adults, 18-year-olds to vote? I'm having a hard time with that.
Thank you, Mr. Grown.
Well, and then at the same time, you know, to have a group who isn't nonpartisan providing transportation is also a problem. And I don't care what side of the spectrum they're on.
Ms. Schaefer?
In response to Mr. Connor's spirited response, I take voting very seriously. We all ran for these elected seats. No one's trying to take the right of a child or an adult away to vote. It's merely whether or not this is within the purview of the schools to provide transportation. And like it or not, there is undue influence by our professionals, especially in this type of partisan atmosphere. You don't live under a rock. This is a very controversial election. And we need to be cautious in how we influence young adults. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to put this.
We got comments. You can't move them over while we in discussion.
Well, my light stays on.
Okay, I hope I'm right here. Again, once you speak, let's be sure you turn your lights off. So, Ms. Jones, me.
So, I don't know, for me, when I was 18, I was very cognizant of going to vote. I remember being signed out of school, going down to the election commission on Georgia Avenue right there, and my mama registered to vote. She took me back to school, but she did take me out. That was my field trip for my 18th birthday. I was going to go register to vote because people had sacrificed for us to have that right. I do think it is degrading and demeaning to think that 18-year-olds don't know who they want to represent them. I also think it's demeaning and degrading to us as a district and our teachers that teach civics and American government and American history and social studies and social science all the way down to elementary school to say that our kids don't know what they're doing, because that would mean we have done a bad job in teaching them what civics is and civic engagement is, and I don't want to believe that. I just don't. I will say that at this point, it has just always given me great angst, and I knew we would get here when the state of Tennessee decided to give parties the right to make school boards partisan. Because kids, young adults, older teenagers, whatever we want to say to them, really don't care what letter is behind your name when you're advocating for them. They really, really don't. The children don't. The students don't, I should say. So I just knew this was going to become an issue at some point, and clearly this has. Now, once again, I was here a couple years ago when we had people in the community, like Ms. Haddon was saying, that wanted to just say, hey, we're offering free rides to the polls. You're free to take these rides to the polls. Students did that, and it was a big debacle. Dr. Robertson, I want to thank him for hearing the board, because like Dr. Smith, like Mr. Smith, like Dr. Smith, like Mr. Smith said, it was pretty much a unanimous conversation that if you're going to do it if you're going to allow one set of students or certain sets of students to do it, all students should be allowed to do it, and that's what he was trying to do. I keep hearing about these taxpayer dollars, but y'all, we use taxpayer dollars for a whole lot of things. In that case, Justin, don't buy me no Christmas gift because I know it comes from my budget. That's a taxpayer dollar.
Here.
In that case, Steve, don't get us no chips back here to eat on and snack on. I'll bring my own snacks because those are taxpayer dollars. Because you're not paying for those out of your check, I know. I'm just saying we cannot pick and choose those kinds of things. And I do feel like it is the completion of their civic engagement or civics curriculum to let them complete the final step of teaching them civics in that case. But nevertheless, I'm not going to sit here
and die on a hill about how they're going to get there. What I want to know is so we have a couple of things here. One, people don't want us to let philanthropy get them there. People don't want us to get them there. Okay, that's fair. So with that being said, with the access too. So like, we talked about giving all access. Well, if a principal, like Mrs. Schaefer said, well, what if my administrator at the high school that she represents decides to say, no, we don't want to partake in that? Well, to me, the principal has made a decision for the student. And is that providing them access? I don't know. That's a question there. Second to that is, if we're not going to provide them the transportation, and we're not going to let the community give them the transportation, then what is the alternative? Like, what is being recommended as the alternative? My second question is, if we prohibit them from using if we prohibit them from using, or will we prohibit them from using free transportation? So say Caleb does still want to give it. Is it okay for them to get on the Caleb van? Or is there going to be a problem? Is there going to count against them? Because that is access to getting them there. That's a question for me. Also, if they had a parent, a cousin, a grandma, a big sister, a church member, somebody come and get them and sign them out to go vote and bring them back, is that excused? If they come in late because they're going to go vote, is that excused? If they need to leave early to go vote before they go to work, is that excused? Because yes, there is early voting on Saturday, but in some areas, and people get wherever they want to get, so let me just make that disclaimer. But in some areas, it is not a luxury to get a ride to certain spaces at any given time as it would be in other places. And that goes for students, adults, elderly people, an infant. Access is not always access the way we see it in our lives. So I just have a couple, those are my questions. Like, if we're not going to do that, fine. Okay, we're not going to spend taxpayer dollars. Okay, but if they still want to go, what provisions are we going to put in place to allow them to do that? And they be supported in that, and it not count against them if they're late or if they leave early or if they're like that kind of thing. Like, are we going to talk about that? Because I'd like to know what we're going to do to help the child. I mean, to help the student get to vote, or support them in their right to vote, versus what we're going to do to hinder that. The reason why I don't want to keep, I'm just going to say this, the reason why I want to keep going down that path, because in a minute it's going to feel like we implementing voter suppression. And I don't want to be a part of that. So I just want to talk about what is going to be put in place, or what can we do, or what are we going to task or ask, not task, but what are we asking of Dr. Robertson and his team to help us help these young people exercise their final step in civic engagement?
Okay, this could go on, and we're going to have to come to a resolution of some kind. Mr. King, I've got your light and Ms. Schaefer on, and then we're going to need to come to some kind of agreement here. So go ahead, Mr. King.
Dr. Robertson, just ballpark figure. I know you can't give us an exact, but how much are we talking about to begin with? What's the cost?
If every single high school participated, it'd be just over $8,000. But again, off the top of my head, I know that we've got at least 4 or 5 that are not. So, somewhere I would estimate between 4,000 to 6,000.
And we only do this every 4 years for the presidential election.
Well, we do it for, like, we did it 2 years ago for a national election. We don't. Okay. Someone asked me earlier today, like, are we going to vote for, the town of Walden's election? No, we're not doing that. We've done it here. And again, like, I feel bad that this has been caused. That's not the intent. The intent literally was learning a lesson from 2 years ago and try to remedy those things. I would say moving forward in 2 years, like, if we want to go another direction, we go another direction.
Okay. I was just curious the cost, and I didn't know. I figured it was presidential, but every 2 years. So.
Yeah. Okay. Ms. Schaefer, and then I'm gonna speak. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Schaefer. Go ahead.
Are arguments done?
I don't know that.
We don't vote during this session.
Yeah.
I'd like to put it on to the next session.
You can't do that. You gotta wait till the next session.
That next section.
Okay.
I'm gonna wrap this up, and if we want to talk about it in our regular meeting, we can. Dr. Robertson, you and I have had this conversation. I struggle with this too. I really appreciate what y'all have done, because we had, this same conversation 2 years ago, and it was just as heated then as it is right now. And we went ahead and let those kids go vote. And then you've responded to that by saying, all right, we're going to let them all do this. You've responded to that. And the problem I have now is it's very clearly that there's a lot of division on what this body wants to see take place. And I think that's true in the community. I've had a lot of calls yesterday. The thing I struggle with at this point is that we've told these kids we're going to do this. Now we're going to take it and say, no, we're just kidding. We're not going to do it. So I struggle with that. I wish that Mr. Bennett was here. Procedurally, can this board at this point tell you this is not a policy? It's a field, you're operating like a field trip. And we could reject the field trip, I guess.
It's not an overnight field trip. It doesn't go to board.
Yeah, this don't come to this one.
So really.
Yeah. So can I clarify what my recommendation was? And like, you and I have talked about this, and we're on the same page about it. Is I think at this point, leading up to this one, we need to move forward with it. I would recommend as we go forward, whether it's through the policy committee or whatever committee we want it to go through, my fear is that because this is heated and it's turned into this, like anything you do is going to be a knee-jerk reaction. We need to get it right. There's going to be another election. There's going to be another conversation around this. I would recommend, I'll take the blame on this one. We move forward as we are. I'll clarify with schools that this is not a requirement, that we're just trying to provide it if it's there. And as we move forward, probably most appropriately is through the policy committee, is to, if board desires to change policy around this and prevent it from happening, or put guardrails on it, or whatever it is, like make it clear for whoever is sitting in this seat so that we don't run into this fun conversation.
Okay, and I'm trying to really come up with a common sense approach to this. I can live with what you're recommending here. Comments just to Dr. Robertson's suggestion here.
I just have one question.
Go ahead.
I just have one question. So if you recommend it to the administrators of the school, and Jones High School principal says, well, I'm not getting a bus, but the 11 students right here want to go vote.
So we again.
What is going to be, what is their opportunity? So if the principal says we're not going to get a bus, and I'm not going to say, say it's 100 kids and they need a bus, or 30, but I'm not going to get a bus. I've made a decision as I have the autonomy as the principal here, and I'm not going to do the bus. But there are 30 children 30 students that want to go vote. Are we going to, what will be the process for them? Like, is it excused if they leave and go vote? Like, I just want to make sure that they know that there's not a.
Yeah,
okay.
second component of this, of providing time for kids to go vote. I mean, what we talked about as administrative team is a lot of parents, when their kids turn 18, it's kind of like a family event, right? And so we don't want to take that opportunity.
Right.
So on election day, if you bring in your proof of voting, it's an excused absent, or sorry, excused tardy.
Okay.
Mr. Grom.
Dr. Robertson, how many total students are we talking about?
I don't have that number, but if you think, it's typically about 3,300, 3,500 kids in any grade level, probably by this time of year, not even half of them. I'm looking at Gary to help me. It's probably, we probably have
closer to
1,500 to 2,000
that are actually
18-year-olds.
18.
Right.
It might be less than that.
We've got it broken down by each school. We can add it up. And sorry.
You still have the floor, Mr. Grom.
Yeah. So, and then do we have any idea how many are registered at each of our high school locations? This includes,
Yep.
you know, if they're at the UTC program or Chat State program, STEM, whatever.
We for sure have the number of registered. I don't know that we have the number of all the 18-year-olds, but we definitely have the number of registered.
Well, that's my
voters.
question.
Yes, we'll get it to you.
Oh, okay. Well, then just later, okay? We're having too much fun already.
Okay, so, again, I wish Mr. Bennett was here, but it sounds to me like, I mean, you work for this board, obviously, and if this board says don't do this, then you can't do it. That's a question.
It would be a weird.
It would be.
you know,
It would
weird
be
moment.
terrible.
But this is the thing, is I think that, again, like, this is not something you want to rush into. This is a policy. To do it right, you would need to have a policy on a board agenda.
So, Dr. Robertson, that's what I'm trying to infer, is that we've already told our kids we're going to do this at this point. And probably the wrong thing to do would say, no, we're just kidding. So if we're going to do this time, we've got to have something in place between now and the next time.
Right.
Whether.
Have
it's
we
like
told
what you
them?
said.
That's the question. Have the
that's-
students been told, or just the administrators been told at
Well,
this
then
point?
We have students that we know that have registered and signed up, so. But again, I mean, right now, if we're technically speaking about the relationship between this decision and the board, it is technically an administrative decision. It is not a policy, right? There's not a policy, so it was an administrative decision that I was making based on feedback I got 2
That's
years
right,
ago.
that's right.
So technically speaking, it wasn't y'all's decision.
Right.
If we need to take this out of possibility moving forward, you would need to write a policy and go that route.
Well, let me suggest that we're in a can't-win situation here, depending upon who's going to call us from what end of the political spectrum. And the word is out already. And I think I'm feeling we should go forward with this. And then we're having policy committee meeting next week where we can address this issue for the future. That's just me.
You bet. Okay, Mr. Connor, final word.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to set passion aside and say to that exact thing. Like we're delving into the realm of operations, and we don't get to say that to the superintendent. We employ him to do the operations. It's the same thing as when we read the statement about people talking about it, they need to take it up with the superintendent. So it's not even an overnight field trip. So it's an operational issue that Dr. Robertson has to deal with. So the only way for us as this body legally, according to Robert's rules and following, I would hope what Mr. Bennett would back me up on, is that we need to do a policy. We could do a first and final read, but we could not do that until the next meeting since it hasn't been drafted for this meeting. Right. So in order for us to address this legally and correctly, and again, only if we did a first and final read, the earliest we could possibly do that is our meeting in November.
Okay, thank you for the spirited discussion. We've more than extended our time for work sessions. What I'm going to do, we're going to take just a brief little break and then come back and start our regular session.